200, 900, 300, 18,000. Mentis!
What?
We're doing a sequel. Right, so our first video on lost letters did a whole lot better than we were expecting. So honestly, thank you. We sure know how to strike while the iron is hot. 5 months later. You needn't have seen part 1 to understand what we'll be covering. Same general premise applies. We're looking at some of the strange and obscure letters that have been removed from our languages and our writing over the years. Last time was pretty Anglo-centric, and based on your guys' feedback, we'll be broadening it a bit this time, looking at some Cyrillic and Gothic letters. Almost everything we're covering today are things you lovely people have suggested in the comments last time. So, if you'd like a part 3, or have any ideas, we would love to hear them.
What about the triple U?
No, we're not doing this again.
It's real!
Stop emailing the IPA!
I know they're hiding something.
God, moving on. We'll start with a pair of some very funky looking letters from the Cyrillic alphabet. Big Yus and Little Yus. Also called Yus Malyi and Yus Bolshoi respectively. Side note, we're definitely going to pronounce a lot of things wrong in this video. We've tried really hard to find the most accurate pronunciations we can, but realistically we'll still probably screw up a few things. So apologies for our painful anglicising. Back to the letters at hand. The interesting thing is that Big Yus, Little Yus doesn't actually correspond to being a capital letter. There are, confusingly, lowercase and uppercase versions of both. So there's a little Big Yus and a Big Yus. Basically, it's just a really bad Punnett square. They both represent nasal vowels. Little Yus is a nasalised front vowel, often E, sounding like whereas its big counterpart is the nasal O, And what's fascinating here is that part of the reason these letters disappeared was that the sounds they represented seems to have disappeared from languages too. Let's look at the history.
I'll take it from here.
But
it's in your contract. History is in my domain. Right, let's see what all this Big Yus is about. To briefly summarise, Cyrillic is a script, a system of writing that is used to represent several different languages across numerous countries, such as Ukraine, Belarus, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, Russia, and many others, named after this guy, Saint Cyril. When it comes to language, he was a very busy man, and he and his brother spent years standardising the Slavic languages to create Old Church Slavonic. Yeah, if the saint part didn't give it away, this was all done to help spread Christianity. If that wasn't enough, they also created the Glagolitic script. Yes, it's the one from The Witcher. And this is where we get our first use of Yus. After the death of Saint Cyril, his disciples would then create the Cyrillic script, naming it after him, essentially taking and altering the Greek alphabet. This actually gives us a load of lost Cyrillic letters that are just copied homework from Greek. We don't need theta kids, we've got theta at home. Why pay for chi when we've got xi? Others, like Omega and Psi, didn't even get a legally distinct name, but in all honesty, they were just loan letters, used primarily in translating Greek words more accurately, so it's less like linguistic theft and more like an earnest attempt at bridging a divide between languages' different pronunciations. But all of these Greek add-ons were eventually phased out through spelling reforms. But just as Cyrillic needed to borrow Greek letters for Greek sounds, it also incorporated several Glagolitic characters, and this is where we get the Yuses. They were 2 such letters with no Greek version, since their sounds were mostly found in Slavonic languages. And that also meant that, as more countries began using the Latin alphabet over Cyrillic, and changes in dialect made nasal vowels increasingly rare, the Yuses began to disappear. Poland is among the only ones to now retain the original pronunciations, though new Latinized symbols have replaced Yus. Meanwhile, other languages like Slovak or Russian got new symbols as the pronunciation itself changed. This reversed R, the Russian Ya, was created from Little Yus and became its primary replacement, coinciding with a loss of nasal vowels in Ruthenian and Russian dialects. Other countries followed suit, such as Bulgaria. It was one of the last to still use Yus, but a pro-Soviet government in 1945 enacted a spelling reform to remove it, and heavily promoted the use of easternized pronunciations that dropped the nasal vowel to better align with Russia. And within 10 years it had worked, and the sounds themselves had become so rare that when kids heard their grandparents using the original nasal pronunciations, they thought they were speaking a wholly different language. So, through cultural and historical changes, this once prevalent part of the Slavic language was erased, bar the odd exception like Polish or Kashubian, a rare example where the letter was not only lost, but the sound itself lost too.
Whilst we're on Cyrillic, we'll also take a moment to look at their weird obsession with making loads of different variations of the letter O. A lot of these all come from the church again, and have more decorative purposes than functional ones, like the broad on, which has no real difference to a standard on, which is a Cyrillic O, but does have an extremely long and convoluted list of rules of when it's appropriate to use it, which I will not be explaining. Trust me, it's just really dull. But we also get a load of O's that have even more specific use cases, purely for visual interest. If you're writing the word for I, which has an O in it in Russian, just stick a dot in the middle. Boom! Now it looks like an I. Isn't that cute? Is that less of a letter, and more like some over-the-top decorated handwriting? Who knows, but apparently monocular O was good enough for Unicode. And you know what? If we're talking about multiple I's, just add more dots, or stick another O on it. Is that more than one letter? Nope, just 2 O's. Add a cross for all I care, seeing as we're just tacking anything on now.
You dare shake my brethren.
Jesus Christ!
Be not afraid.
Maybe say that after you appear next time. God, I thought the Christian Elmo last time was bad. So, this is the multi-ocular O, more commonly referred to as biblically accurate O. Less of an ophonym, more of an oophonym. But unfortunately, that name is actually bang on the money, because the only time this abomination was sincerely used was in one random 15th century manuscript in reference to many-eyed angels, known as seraphim. So yeah, biblically accurate, and also in Unicode for some ungodly reason. Okay, what else? Hold on, what's this one? Another bloody O, is that all we could get for this episode?
No, that's a different one. It's not even Cyrillic.
So which one is this then?
It's called Hwair. It's Gothic.
Well, it's a bit emo, I'll give you that.
No, it's from the Goths. They were a group of people from about 1500 years ago, living in what is now Moldova, Romania, and Ukraine.
Sorry, where was that?
Why do you always do this?
Oh, I'm just kidding, I'll get out of your where.
Moving on. We'll get Gothic for the last letters in this video. As the name suggests, Hwair represented the HW sound, which is strangely written backwards in English a lot as huh, like in who, what, when, where. But why? Well, to make a long story short, it was something called the wine-wine merger, where the W sound became indistinguishable in most dialects from HW. Hence, you can whine about wine and it still sounds the same. Before that, a lot of Old English spellings actually did use the HW spelling, such as whet and when.
So what you're saying is, it is actually pronounced cool-whip.
Not that word specifically, that one has a different origin, and the Gothic language was pretty unique among its peers for actually giving that HW sound its own letter. It did also see, for a brief time, a limited run in German, where it was transliterated using this symbol, a digraph of H and W. But it never really caught on, and so Hwair ultimately faded into obscurity, and we're still not exactly sure where it went.
Whilst we're on the topic of the hot topics...
You mean the Goths?
Oh, close enough. It's worth mentioning how interesting the Gothic alphabet was. Whilst it was ultimately rendered extinct, it's still a fascinating oddity of a language, seeing as it was influenced by both Latin, Greek, and runic sources. A big melting pot of everything from Latin to Elder-Furthark.
Elder-Furthark.
You say what now?
Elder-Furthark, the runic alphabet that isn't a language, whose name you apparently managed to read, write, and say wrong multiple times in the script without even noticing.
Have we been saying it wrong this entire time?
Well, all of part one.
Did anybody...
Quite a few.
I am so great at proofreading.
And I think we'll just about have to leave it there for this episode. If you've got any suggestions for a part 3, or noticed anything this time, then let us know in the comments. Until then, this has been Compos Mentis. Thanks for watching.
English language.
English language.
We've all had enough of you making it tough for us all to pronounce here.
All to pronounce here.
You need to pick a freaking lane with the sounds you're making, like O-U-G-H.
It's said how it's spelled.
Psych! It's ow, ooh, or uff, uck, up, or up. Well, what is up with that?
I'm so confused.
English language.
English language.
We've all had a new of you making it too for us to pronounce. You make me want to commit first degree man's laughter. Look at the word Q.
Q.
There sounds already the first letter what's with the extra ooey.
Way.
Are we just adding anything to the ending of words now? English language.